Hey guys, it's summertime, and life is all about weekends, cookouts, and all things outdoors. And the JCPenney men's store is the place to go for some serious summer style, where shorts, tees, and swim trunks from brands like St. John's Bay, Dockers, and Izod go for a cool 40 to 50% off. And spend $25 or more with coupon on men's apparel, shoes, and accessories, and you get $10 off. We've got your look, your style, and a great price. The men's store at JCPenney. When it fits, you feel it. Coupon valid 5/28 to 5/31. Some exclusions apply. Check jcp.com now or your Thursday newspaper for coupon and details.
Giancarlo Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Rip right field towards the corner. Gone!
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio. SVP and Russillo, the podcast.
Hey, it's SVP and Russillo. Appreciate you checking out the podcast. A lot of topics that have people mad. Everyone's just mad about everything. People are mad Steph Curry came back in the game after he fell and hit his head. People are mad about Matthew Dellavedova, think he's a dirty player. People are suggesting the Bears should be penalized for signing a player who they cut after yet another incident alleging domestic abuse. We talk about the future for Houston and Atlanta, presuming both are about to be bounced from the NBA playoffs. Dallas Keuchel, one of the best pitchers in the game, stops by from the Houston Astros to talk about what he has more pride in, his fielding, a Gold Glover, or his beard. Think James Harden if you've not seen it. That and assorted nonsense. Podcast starts now.
Now, SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNRadio.com.
Hope you had a safe Memorial Day weekend. Got to do some fun things. Russillo's got Boo's voice, but it's not Boo's. He's got a hurt sinus thing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great, but
he's got Van Pelt Western Open '96 when I got banned by the Golf Channel for going to Chicago for several years. He's got that voice. Congratulations, Steve Stricker, on your big win.
Did go out 2 nights ago, but yeah, this is I've been fighting this sinus thing now for days. It's been brutal. I mean, I feel good now. I just sound extra hot.
You know what though, dude? You're hurt. You shouldn't be hosting this. How can you be hosting this show right now? You hurt yourself.
How could ESPN be this responsible? Airball? Did you see the airball?
What's the sinus infection protocol? So last night, Steph Curry took a horrifying fall. And it's happening in slow motion, and if you're a Golden State fan, or if you're just a fan of watching great basketball, and this guy's playing it right now, as he's falling, you're thinking, oh, God, please don't be hurt. Just for him, for the game, selfishly, and thankfully, Curry ends up being well enough to come back and play. We'll get to that momentarily. As it's happening in real time for Curry, he's thinking what?
It's a bad feeling because you're trying to make a play on the ball, thinking he's going up for a layup, and once you see the situation changes immediately in the air, you got no control over yourself, and it could have been a lot worse. So just thankful that once I got back to the locker room and kind of gathered myself, I kind of understood what was going on, and there was a chance I could get back out there once I went through all the tests the doctors wanted me to do, and that's what happened.
And that's what happened. And the other thing that happened was that everybody was mad that he was back out there playing. And I don't get it.
I'm with you. I completely agree with you on this one, so I don't know that there's going to be any debate whatsoever. I just don't know how we got to this place where anytime there's a head thing, we're not overly cautious. We're irrational. Where no one's allowed to ever play in the game again. But you can't have doctors clear him. He shoots an air ball, people freak out. Like, get him back out there. You have a chance to close out a team. And you know what? They were a Barbosa 3 away from making it a 3-point game with 7 minutes left to go in the game.
All I could think of as it related strictly to X's and O's, as everyone's saying, well, why would you try to come back in this game? 2 things. You erased a massive deficit in the first series on the road against the Pelicans because your ability to take and make threes against a team that's going to help you come back because they're not going to play cautiously. You have a chance, and you probe a little bit, and you see if maybe you can carve out that massive deficit. And as you just point out, the ball's in the air, and it's nearly a one-possession game if it goes, and it rattled. That thing rattled halfway down, and I'm thinking, oh, my gosh. And Houston, man, they're going to pucker so bad if that happens. They're going to – I mean, the odds of you stealing that series and now being able to just sit and wait until June the 4th, if you can steal it, it's worth trying to steal it. if, underline 100 times, capital letters if Curry's well enough to play. And this is the part that drives me bat bleep crazy, is that the all-knowing view from the couch or the press box is such that there's no way he should be allowed back, and concussion protocol gets brought up, and it's just, what do you know about the concussion? I admittedly don't know, but what do you know? And what do you know about what Curry told him? Besides nothing.
Yeah, what do you know about what happened during the test that tells you that this is the wrong thing to do?
He shot an air ball, dude.
Right,
air ball.
so he's out at 5-something minutes to go in the second, comes back 5 minutes to go in the third, around that. And, you know, sometimes you can look rusty just because you're a guy that's used to playing 40 minutes and being in the flow and rhythm of a basketball game, and then you come out. So what happens? So the air ball and then the block shot off the screen, so then does that mean he was healed when he read the double teams right and kicked it out to other guys and started getting it going? Because he actually started to get this thing going. So just do this. Do this. If you're one of those guys, do this. Moving forward, anytime somebody has any kind of head injury, concussion or not, just admit you never want that person to play in the game again. You never want them to have the ability, the option to return once even cleared medically, because you're just going to be that guy. And that's a guy I can't talk to. This isn't awareness. This is stupidity. Like, we had the guy, the Vanderbilt, was it a Thursday night football game a couple years ago? Or was it this past season? Guys throwing up on the sideline.
It was them against Ole Miss. Crazy game. 2 years ago.
Yeah, it
Jordan
was
Matthews?
yeah, it started the season
I think
off.
it was.
You go, how can he be out there? And they're like, he never hit his head. Like, he was exhausted at the start of the season.
Yeah, he just had the summer pukes.
Right. So he's not in football shape yet. So is that fun? Like, who are you saving? And then you get the guys that are like, Steve Young had $1 million. Hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry Steve Young has had a ton of concussions. But is it even possible? Could you allow yourself to believe a scenario where a guy does hit his head and doesn't have a concussion?
No.
Is it possible that could actually happen today?
No.
Because you're right.
Protocol.
It's incredible. Like, is that fun to do
shot
that?
an air ball.
Like, what is it? Is it being the first commenter on YouTube? Saw it first, not safe, Curry. You can't do this. Endangerment.
And I think we all would agree.
I wish I could swear during this segment.
Go ahead and do it. I think we all would agree that being more aware of head trauma in a sport where it is by definition part of the exchange, i.e. football, it's good to be aware of that. It's good to police it in a way that's different than what we grew up with, not glorifying the headshot hit. All those things.
You're right. The advancements, the awareness, like that part of it is good.
That's great. But the problem is that now, to the point you were just making, with great rage and furious rage, great rage and furious anger. I'm getting my Ezekiel 25:13. It doesn't matter. Is that now any injury that involves the head has everyone screaming, protocol, he can't be allowed back in, you have to protect him from himself. And I don't know the degree to which he was nicked up, and neither do you. And so he got back out there and he played. Tim Legler, bottom of the hour, some thoughts on that, as well as the other topics du jour relating to the NBA. Steph Curry's comeback in the game last night was trending, and what's trending now is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. New improved taste, 10 great flavors. Have you tried 5 Hour Energy shots lately? We're a game away from LeBron and Curry in the finals, which is a pretty exciting possibility. The fact that we'd have to wait until June the 4th for it to happen is not a treat. That's set in stone. But that's what we're set up for. And presuming that Curry's okay, and presuming LeBron's okay.
Do we know? Do you even know?
I don't know.
I mean, why risk it in the finals?
That's a good point. We should be more careful.
Are you not even thinking of next season?
I'm not. I'm just not.
SVP and Russillo.
Ray McDonald over the weekend involved in yet another troubling incident, which led the Chicago Bears to release him. And Louis Riddick was on Mike and Mike today, who I appreciate the guy a lot because he knows the game from all angles. And this is a black and white viewpoint of the reality of a bottom line business, about why people are given second chances.
When you're talking about players that aren't as talented, hey, it's easy to go ahead and say, well, we're not going to bring that guy around based on his character background. But really the reason why you're saying it is, well, he's not good enough anyway. Not because you necessarily feel as though he doesn't have a place in the NFL based on his decision-making. It's strictly because you don't think he has enough value to you on the football field. And that's why we will always have this conversation, because it's a talent-driven league, and talent trumps character more times than not. I know it. You know it. We all know it.
And we also know that McDonald was booked on suspicion of felony domestic violence after an incident involving his fiancée last August when he was with San Francisco. No charges were filed there. And the Niners cut him loose, citing a pattern of poor decision-making. He's picked up by the Bears, and then after this weekend, a troubling incident that involves a late-night/early morning altercation where he allegedly struck a woman who's holding a child. No one would defend that. No one. It's understood that that's an indefensible thing, and the Bears quickly move on from McDonald.
And going back to the San Francisco thing, when it turned into, well, what do you do with Ray McDonald? You go, well, we're waiting on a charge here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we never get that charge. So I was the belief at the time, you go, you just keep moving with this stuff. And I guess it seems like now the climate is that even if you're not charged and you're just implicated in something, or you're a person of interest in these types of horrible acts, that it's just enough to move on. With him, there's enough of a track record, even without the charges, where it's okay to move on. But this is turning into something far bigger, right?
It is. I'm going to get to that in just a second, because what the Bears did, and let's take this, the totality of what we're talking about here. We're talking about a talented guy that's had incidents. We're saying, Louis Riddick is saying that talent trumps character in this league. Bottom line driven league. You're going to give a second chance to a guy that has talent. What the Bears did was they went to consult people about McDonald to find out who he was. And they went to his family. They went to his coach in college, who was Urban Meyer. They went to Vic Fangio, who was the D.C. defensive coordinator
for San Francisco,
who's now in Chicago. So there's a relationship there.
What do you think his parents were going to say?
Precisely. And that's why it's reasonable. That's why it's very reasonable to cite the Bears there and say, look, you gave the second chance to a guy because the folks that vouched for him were people that, in Fangio and his parents' case, would be motivated to vouch for him. Urban, if he was a rotten guy, you'd hope Urban would say, he's kind of iffy. But who knows what Urban would say? I don't know what their relationship is. But it's reasonable to criticize Chicago for that. If that's the people that vouched for him, well, what else would they have done? But this is what I'm frightened about, the climate that we live in right now, where it's proposed today in a USA Today article by Nancy Armour. I'm just going to read this directly. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell ought to slap the Chicago Bears with a hefty fine and dock them a draft pick or two. Suspend general manager Ryan Pace for 4 games. Ban owner George McCaskey from the stadium for the first half of the season while he's at it, too, since it was McCaskey's enlightened decision to blow off the alleged victim when he gave the okay to sign McDonald. The suggestion is that a team that gave a second chance to a guy should be docked draft picks, the GM should be suspended 4 games, and the owner banned from the stadium for half the year because they signed a guy who they cut before he even showed up to play for him because he was alleged in this incident. That's a horrifying suggestion to me that's where we are. And I say that while we're all on the same page that I'm not excusing McDonald. I hope that's obvious, but what are we saying? Because you gave a second chance to a guy, because this is what it is? All right, let me ask you a question. I went out to dinner with my wife last night. When I go out to dinner, I don't know if you call me a boring date or a cheap date. I don't know. I drink iced tea, because if I'm going to drive a car, I'm not going to drink. I'm not moralizing. I don't want to hurt anybody. And if I get pulled over on the way home, my name's in the paper and then ESPN, and we all have to deal with it. So I don't do that. But let's say I did. Let's say I got a DWI.
How high do you usually get, though?
Baked.
Okay.
Faded. I'm good. I don't do that either. My point is, if I got a DWI and ESPN had to get rid of me, and then I went and someone would, maybe they'd hire me. Fox hires me. And then I get another one. Driving while intoxicated, horrible things happen. People lose their lives. Domestic abuse, obviously, horrible situation. But then the suggestion that this organization should be draft picks and owners banned from the stadium and the GM suspended for giving a chance to a guy because of this hot button issue, it feels like an incredible reaction to this climate that seems dangerous to me.
I'm with you. And I bet you more people read that and they go, you know what? You're right. The Bears should be punished. The punishment is the wasted. Now, granted, they don't lose much money because it was non-guaranteed because that's who he was at this point. But is it okay to just cut a guy? Like, is it okay to just cut the guy?
Right. They immediately said, we can't have this.
Screwed up. Shouldn't have signed him. I gave him a chance. Told him, it was a no-tolerance situation. And he screwed up, and now he's gone. So
that's not enough now.
No, it isn't. And the thing is we've seen the league react. So I think people feel more empowered than ever before to suggest, well, this needs to happen. I mean, Ray Rice, everybody got what they wanted with Ray Rice. Ray Rice may not have a career. And he went through the intervention program. So, nobody's backing Ray Rice here. Nobody's backing, like disagreeing with the idea that the Bears should be hammered with punishment is not backing domestic violence.
Of course not.
It's just, whoa, man. I mean, the guy's cut. He's probably not going to gig again.
And this is not me. This is not me feeling sorry for Ray Rice. He created his own circumstance here. But this what happens with McDonald now makes the climate to give him a second chance even more narrow, I would think, because if he ever screws up again too, then again, apparently it's not enough to just say we could have done this differently. We did what we thought was our due diligence. We could have done more, blah, blah, blah.
Basically, people are just mad. They're mad that the Bears could do something that felt kind of arrogant. Like, wait a minute, you're going to bring him in?
It was a flawed way to go about it. You went to people that were going to green light what you wanted to do, which is bring in a guy that would help your football team because talent trumps character. It just feels that we are on the Autobahn of no more chances, and then if you give a chance and it goes wrong, then you get penalized for that too.
SVP and Russillo.
Tuesdays during the baseball season means a visit with Tim Kurkjian. Tim, thanks for the time as always. This is a scary 2 words to see in a sentence involving Matt Harvey. Dead arm. Terry Collins used that term in talking to the New York Daily News after his worst start of his career, tagged for 7 earned, 4 innings, 2 wild pitches they lost, shortest start in his career. That's not a term to be used lightly. That's not a season ender, but when you hear that in the sentence with Harvey and a guy coming back from surgery, what's your immediate reaction?
Well, that's a bit of a red flag, Scott. There's no way around that, especially when it comes up at the end of May, especially when he's pitched as well as he has. That is usually a spring training term, halfway through March, and, you've thrown a few innings and your arm isn't responding, and then it comes around and you're ready for April the 1st. When it comes around in May, it's a bit of a concern. I think he's big and strong enough to throw his way through anything at this point. It looks like they're going to go to a 6-man rotation perhaps to see if they can give him a little bit extra rest. But I think just how competitive he is going to get his way through this because every pitcher's had this. They've had it at all points of the season, and most of them just throw their way right through it. I don't think this is related to Tommy John, and I think he's going to be okay.
That'd be great news. After the great start for the Mets, we've seen the Nationals, as advertised, play great baseball. They're 27-18. They've won 8 of their last 10. The Mets are in second place. The first flagpole of the baseball season, Memorial Day. You got enough of an idea of who's who and what's what to make some educated thoughts. Is the American League East the Major League Baseball's most balanced or most mediocre division?
I think it's the most mediocre, Scott. I went into the season thinking that 4, maybe 5 teams had a chance to win that division. I picked the Orioles based on how well they pitched the second half of last year, but they haven't pitched that way this year, and I think they should feel fortunate. All teams in that division should feel fortunate to be where they are, that none of them has played very well, and they're all still right in the hunt. I think we should get used to this. I don't see any team being good enough to pull away. I don't think any of those teams is bad enough to just fall off the edge. I think this is going to be a 5-team race. I think 89 wins might win it, and it'll be real fun to watch, but it's not a very good division, and we're really used to this being a great division. But the last few years, other than the Orioles, basically, it's tailed off a little bit.
Tim, of all the sports, we're talking football, basketball, the Twins are the team that continue to exceed any mediocre expectations I have for them. They start this year 1-6. I go, look, there's no one in the lineup that scares you. I'm not sure they have a 1 in the rotation. And now that they're 25-12 and a couple games out in the AL Central. How are they doing this again?
Well, the manager has a lot to do with this. Now, the players play, and that's always the most obvious thing. But Paul Molitor has really brought something to that club. I watched him in spring training, and he was teaching every single day. And trust me, fellas, our players are so talented today, but they need to be taught every day on here's how we play the game. And nobody played the game more correctly and better than Paul Molitor did, whether it was stealing a base, stealing a sign, going from first to third on a single, bunting for a hit, taking the extra base. And that's what he's teaching to these guys. And you're right, they don't have a 1. They don't have guys in their order that scare you, but collectively, especially at home, they've been mashing pretty good lately. So I thought the only thing I knew for sure about the American League this year was that the Twins were going to finish 5th in their division. And look how wrong we've been so far. They're 2nd in the division right now. They're playing so well. And I'm not suggesting they're going to make the playoffs, but they're certainly better than anybody thought they'd be. And Paul Molitor is right in the middle of that.
Tim, I don't know if we've talked about this before, and I don't think I'm guilty of just getting excited, but when I look at the baseball prospects that we're all supposed to be aware of, and Jock Peterson had another big weekend, I know that the home run numbers are great. The average hasn't been great in the month of May, but, like, this guy's going to be a stud. And if you go back over the last few years, I feel like most of the players that we were told were going to be studs, pitchers or hitters, like it's turned out that way. I know Dustin Ackley from the Mariners has been a disappointment, but is the game just that much better at identifying and then producing the guys to pay off with these expectations? Because it feels like it is to me.
Yeah, you're right, because some of the guys we've identified have really turned out, from Bryce Harper to Chris Bryant. It's also possible these guys are just so exceptional they can't miss. Now, I've said a million times, you can't miss players basically don't exist in baseball like they do in the other sports. It's the hardest sport to scout. It's the hardest one to develop, and it's the hardest game to play for me, and therefore guys who we think are going to be good don't turn out that way, and vice versa. But with the scouting systems we have out there, we know these players so much better now when they're in high school and college and in pro ball, that we get such a good look at them, that we know a lot better about what they can do. And it's really an exciting time in Major League Baseball to have this many really good young players, from Trout to Harper to Bryant to all sorts of guys. And this is the future of the game, and it's pretty bright as far as I can see.
Tuesday visit with Tim Kurkjian. Tim, what's been the reaction around baseball to two different pitchers with foreign substances on their arm in a week? It feels a bit like a speed trap to me. You know, we know you're exceeding the speed limit. We're going to pull a few folks over just to remind folks that you need to slow down a little bit. Is that a reasonable comparison?
Yeah, and you need to hide everything a little bit better, and that's what I've heard for the last week. We did a little segment on Baseball Tonight last night, where Dallas Braden of ESPN explained to us how he used to apply foreign substances to the ball, and he used to do it, he acknowledged, to get an edge. And he acknowledged that if you're not cheating, you're not trying. But he also told us that he believes 95% of the pitchers use this stuff just to get some sort of grip and make it a little bit easier to throw a pitch rather than getting an advantage. And that's what I hear from virtually everyone that I talk to is, you know, it's like John Farrell said, look, something's wrong here. If we're suspending guys for 8 games, everybody's doing this. We need to have a little meeting about what this is all about. Because if you're not getting a significant advantage, why don't we just open it up and let these guys use some of these things rather than just hiding it? But as long as it's still legal, just do a better job concealing it, and I think you'll get away with it, and no loss for wear there.
Tim, I have a pop quiz for you. He was drafted in the first round in 1988. He hit the first home run ever at Coors Field. He played for 5 different major league teams, the last of which was Atlanta. Who is he?
I should know this. I don't know. Who is it? I love it when you say this. Who is it?
Rico Brogna. Rico Brogna.
So when he was in Atlanta, who was the pitching coach there?
Leo Mazzoni. I love that this is tuned in to you making me punish you. Why are you doing this? You're done after I ask you the question. It doesn't have to get worse, but old Leo Mazzoni was the pitching coach down there. See you, Tim. You're the best.
Hey, Tim, you remember that closer, though, for the Braves, though, that kind of fell apart?
Marco Willard.
Bye, Tim. Okay, it's now going around the bend. He now asks a question. Russillo asks a question. I love it more than anything.
How about him trying to say Wohlers?
Wohlers. It's hard. Brogna, Rico Brogna. I don't know if we've done that, but we've only got a.
We've never done Rico Brogna?
I thought we did.
I thought we have. He's a local guy. Outsiders buddies with him. Didn't you guys go to school together?
He was a few years ahead of me, but he was like our assistant basketball coach. He used to give me a ride to.
Definitely used to buy you beer for keg parties, right? Come on.
No, he was actually like a religious, I believe.
People can like God and beer too, dude. They're not mutually exclusive.
Do you remember when he hit that home run at Fenway Park in front of his family?
I do.
That was a big deal.
All right.
Grand Slam, wasn't it?
I think so. Right field. Yeah. Right under the bullpen.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
SVP and Russillo.
We'll talk Houston first here because they've actually won a game, and it happened last night. And that 45-point first quarter, which became the impetus for a super geeky, number-heavy one big thing, which we'll get to at the back half of this hour, that shows you what their ceiling is. Now, no one can shoot like that. It's not sustainable. They're 8 and 9 of 3 in 12 minutes. But presuming that their season has, and we're very careful, Houston. We're very careful.
No, we're not. This is over. Show up in Game 3 at home.
Yeah, that was pitiful. Pitiful. But they bounced back last night. What's their season obit?
It reminds me a little of the Jets with Mark Sanchez.
Really?
Back-to-back AFC.
How so?
Back-to-back AFC title game appearances.
Great pronunciation, man.
And then you go, all right, well, I guess they did. Technically played to get into the Super Bowl.
Not technically, actually.
But is that who they are? And the Rockets, actually, if you don't want to use the word technically, playing in for a chance to get into the NBA Finals. Like, I guess that means you have a chance to win a title. But I don't think that's the neighborhood they live in. I don't. They are the weirdest team for everyone that covers this league to figure out. Whether I just did a podcast earlier with Zach Lowe from Grantland.
It sounded great. I didn't hear his portion, but yours was very interesting. Everyone should listen.
Legs will ask him. It just seems like every NBA guy you talk about, you go, what do you do with those guys, right? Who are they? And they're a team that, okay, they got one last night, and it was a combination of Golden State, the 3-up 3-0 syndrome. But you're right, Houston hit everything to start this thing. It did get close, and Harden was magnificent again.
Yep.
And he's all that. Like, in a way, I think this is good for him because more eyes are on him, and people can go, you know what, the guy he's a little bit more than just a ton of free throws here.
Yeah, and he's also a whole lot more than, wasn't he, the third wheel in OKC? I mean, if you're the casual fan that's still hanging on to that he was one of those three, he's quite capable. How good's your good? You know how I asked that? His is right there with anyone's when it's right.
That step back thing he does to get himself some space on the shot, there is nothing you can do with that. There's nothing, and he's one of those guys that has a part of his game. I don't care. I mean, this is stuff where it's like, send him right. Great players get to where they want to get their shot off, and he has every trick you can imagine as an offense, as a perimeter guy.
And last night, after coming up so small in Game 3 as a team, Kevin McHale and his superstars, aggression and rage.
When you have a tough game, you're not very happy with everything, and he was extremely unhappy yesterday, and took it out. But that's what you got to do. You got to take it out on them. I mean, it doesn't do any good to take it out on the trainer and your teammates and the coaches. You take it out on the other team, and he did it. He went out and played a hell of a game.
Am I wrong though to not know what to do with him? Like, if we come back in next year and say Houston's eliminated, which is likely going to happen here, you got to put Houston on the short list of teams you think can win a title? Because I don't.
No. OKC had an entire season for the first portion of it. You didn't have Westbrook, in the majority of the season you don't have Durant, the MVP of the league. Is New Orleans going to continue to move in a direction where the arrow's pointed up? I think. Well,
of course, but I'm just talking about list the teams. You're right. I get what you're saying as far as other teams getting back into that mix if they have health. But if you're writing it down, like, I don't care what anybody says. I think the Clippers are the better basketball team, and they screwed this thing up. Okay.
Well, so do I.
I think San Antonio's a better team.
So do I.
It's nice to say we played for the Western Conference Championship last season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not doing this as a let's beat up on them because they're down 3-0. They were in game 2. I mean, that shot goes down from Harden, you're split, you're headed home. But I don't know what that effort was on Saturday night.
That was stunning. That was. I mean, there's got to be you absorb that kind of a body blow in game 2, and you'd think and you'd hope that if you're a capable team, that going home would be sort of the accelerator to the spark, and you'd be the one that would play that way. They were great last night, and then they had to hang on for dear life, and your point makes the most sense.
But Harden answered it every time last night. It was awesome.
Without question. Right. His good is great. As for Dwight, I don't think he'll play. I think they have to look at what happened between he and Bogut, and I think this is the point you were making in the podcast, was that it didn't just come out of nowhere. He didn't throw an elbow just because he just decided, hey, let me whale this dude in the head. Bogut full-on shoves him, and you were making the point in the podcast about watching Bogut.
Yeah, Bogut, if you really just want to lock in on Bogut does more, do you call him dirty things? I mean, gamesmanship, whatever.
It's pretty aggressive.
It's brutal. I mean, he pushes you could call it all the time if you wanted to, and every time he does get called for it, complains, I just laugh. I'm like, you should be thanking them for, hey, thanks for not calling what I just did there all the time.
But that's it too, isn't it?
But see, this is what I think is so interesting about the conversation last night. I completely disagree with Jeff Van Gundy saying everything needs to be consistent. Like, we all want punishment to be consistent now in everything, and it just doesn't work that way.
Why not?
It doesn't, because the retaliation, you can't just say elbow to the head. Okay, well, part of it is because Bogut shoves him. So I think what Horford did was worse against Dellavedova, but if they come back and make it a 2 and Howard misses this time, then you start going to Howard. You go, how do you put yourself in this situation? So I can't sit here and say you're wrong and I disagree with you. I didn't have a problem with it being a 1, and I don't have a problem with it being some kind of thing where you separate going, well, that was a little bit worse than that one. Not every elbow is created equal.
That's fair. Now I understand what you mean. Celebrate summer birthdays with a smile. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN for flowers and gifts starting at $29.99. Atlanta season will come to an end if they're unable to do what Houston did, but they've got to do it tonight on the road. I think they'll look back at you lose Horford, and you had Teague blowing by guys. The fact that they settled for that shot at the end game of
Shelvin Mack.
No, the shot in the regulation where Teague could get to the rim.
All right, yeah.
All he wanted. No one could stay in front of that guy, and you've got a dog-tired Cleveland team. And if I'm Atlanta, I'm putting the ball in Teague's hands, which is what they did, and I'm sure as hell not settling for a fade into my left and a screen that LeBron nearly gets through. They got to look. But you've got a chance to steal it, man. I'm not flipping a coin on a three-point shot when I've got a guy that can get to the rim like Teague.
I know what you're saying because it's how tired everybody looked. But bigger picture, I don't look at this Atlanta team and then do the pile-on, see, I told you they weren't that good.
I'm not doing that. I'm saying you could have still, without Korver, you could have still, and without
no
Horford,
he played 19 minutes.
You had a lead, and you could have stolen that, and then that puts a completely different feel on tonight's game, completely different, and they settle for it, and then the shots they get at the end are like, wow, that's a rough one to live and die with, I thought.
Yeah, and then even the Shelvin Mack stuff, and then you're looking at a team going, wait a minute, you're down 2-0, and you're in Game 3 of a playoff game, and you have to play Shelvin Mack and Mike Scott a combined 60 minutes. They'd bench Mike Scott because they were like, we can't live with you out there defensively. So I think the Atlanta elimination, where I look at Houston and go, okay, that was a really nice run, but I'm not sure I put you up there with all those other teams, even though that's how far you got in the playoffs. Whereas Atlanta, the storyline, I think the more popular thing to say will be, well, this proves that their whole thing wasn't that big. Well, look, that team's not healthy. Horford played 19 minutes in Game 3. He's their best player. And we can get caught up in that they don't have a superstar. Horford's a star. Al Horford's a star basketball player, but just not in the sense of the commercials and the endorsements. But he's that good. So I would look at them saying, even though Cleveland doesn't have all these guys, like what Atlanta isn't anything to apologize for. You know?
No, and they live in a different neighborhood. They've got a nicer house and not as nice a neighborhood, you know? I mean, Houston lives in the West. It's tougher to impress out there. We all understand that.
SVP and Russillo.
Let's start with LeBron, just because you made a comment to Tim Legler last hour, for those that might have missed it. To paraphrase the numbers that he had, 37, 18, 13, no one's ever had that combination of points, rebounds, and assists in a playoff game. And yet, you said something that I agreed with. How'd you frame it? You thought he doesn't look what?
I just said something looks off with him. And I know as I'm saying that, I'm setting myself up to be destroyed after the night that he had.
And yet I know what you mean.
It just something seems a little off. It's the worst shooting stretch of his entire career, and it's happening in the playoffs. And if you look at his last 5 games, he's 4-23 from 3. In the playoffs alone, he's about 16%. So there's that part of it. But he's still... I mean, he is doing it all. He is dragging this team to the finish line. So I'm not criticizing him. I'm not. I'm just saying, despite the numbers, it still feels like at times, and maybe I'm just guilty of 0 for 10 to start. I'm just starting to think that this Cavs team, if this is who Golden State plays, it's a lot easier to defend this Cavs team than any other team Golden State will have played in the playoffs. If this is what the Cavs look like, if what we saw this weekend is the Cavs offense we see in the NBA Finals.
He took 37 shots, and it becomes... I mean, that's a big number, man. But
I'm okay with it.
So am I. Whose shots is he taking?
James Jones?
I'm good. I'm good with this guy being the one that takes that many shots because it's not at the expense of someone who I feel is more capable or I'd be more comfortable with. And then ultimately, when it comes down to a huge 3 from the corner where he's patient and he hits, and then it's a drive on the left-hand side that he makes with the right hand. Atlanta's got to be kicking themselves because that's a game they could have stolen.
Imagine if you told them you're going to play the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. They're going to have no Kevin Love and likely no Kyrie Irving. And you'll be down 3-0. Now, other things have happened here where Atlanta doesn't have the depth. Guys aren't right. Guys that are playing don't look right.
Well, I mean, you end up with Horford out. You've got Korver obviously injured.
60 minutes of Shelvin Mack and Mike Scott in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Guys that weren't playing.
If I told you that right after I told you there'd be no Love and Irving, you'd be like, oh, okay, I guess we're on even footing. But LeBron was sensational, and it was still a game that Atlanta could have stolen without Horford, who's not on the floor, and without Korver, who's not on the floor. And it doesn't take that much of a stretch to say, well, there's one common denominator, and the reason neither is on the floor, and that's Matthew Dellavedova. LeBron James was asked during the off day about his teammate Delly and whether or not he is what has been discussed a great deal since these last 2 situations with Korver and Horford played out. Is he a dirty player?
That's far from what he is. He's a guy who beat the odds, who no one thought could play in this league. And now he's starting in the Eastern Conference Finals for a team that has an opportunity to go to the finals. As far as, when guys play hard, as hard as he does, for him to, some people try to tarnish what he does to put a dirty label on him, I think it's unjust.
I don't know how you criticize the guy for diving on the floor to try to get a loose ball with Korver. I don't understand that.
Korver's also stepping up to the loose ball as Dellavedova has already started going down. So
yeah, that's not a screen grab situation.
No.
Because you and I are on the same page. You can make a frame, tell a story, but Dellavedova's already in the process of diving. Legs was explaining last hour that, you got to be in control of your body, and, you don't want to be human bowling here. But that's just that's a bummer. That's a bad break, in my opinion.
So if you told me as a player, or you explained to me, diving at legs, you can do it in a way where you're being reckless and you have no regard for just sportsmanship and all that stuff. Like, I can see where that scenario plays out. But I'm not seeing it with the Korver play. And the Korver play then leads to the Horford reaction in the next game. And here's the thing is, Horford's pushing him down. Horford's one of my favorite players in the NBA. But Horford's pushing him down. Okay, so Dellavedova's going down. He's going down he's a little guy getting banged around with all these guys. So now because the Korver thing gets added, gets added to the Horford thing, and then somehow the Taj Gibson thing becomes the thing. Gibson kills Dellavedova with a screen, then pushes him in the back to the ground on the rebound, and that's when Dellavedova locks up Gibson's leg, and then Gibson goes to kick him but doesn't really finish the thought. So now, because Dellavedova's been part of all these things, it's almost like you have to say he's dirty, but I just see people, I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable saying this guy is a dirty player, although, look, no one ever says anyone on their own team's a dirty player either, so it has really nothing to do with what LeBron says.
And as you watch the situation with Dellavedova and Horford, Carroll's on the ground, and I thought initially he's falling back on top of him, but he's just kind of involved in the mix of all of this. But I thought the conversation between Shaq and Kenny and Charles with Ernie obviously moderating on TNT was fascinating, because Shaq's take, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously Cliff's notes here, was that it's just a guy who's hustling. Charles is saying that Dellavedova is hustling in the absence of talent. He's hustling because that's the only way that he made it. And then Kenny's saying if you're, what's the old thing, once is an accident, twice is a trend, 3 times is a problem, something along those lines. He's saying, look, if you're involved in 3 of these, that's an issue. And then I found it fascinating because we're Shaq, and I agree with Shaq. He said, man, this isn't a talent issue. Hustling is just whether you want to hustle. And being talented doesn't preclude you from hustling. And just because you are out there doing the dirty work doesn't mean you're doing it because you don't have talent.
Right, but Vince Carter wasn't doing this stuff. So Charles is right. I mean, Charles can say, all right, but these are hustling-type plays, not giving up on the play. And if Dellavedova doesn't do those things, I mean, he had an 0 for 4 night from 3 in one of these playoff games. So he's still out there getting minutes because clearly, 1, it's injury, but 2, it's hurt. Right. But it's okay. He gives us some fight. Are you going to go out there? You're going to be scared, or are you going to fight, or you can compete? Like, that to me is the most important thing of trying to figure out any player. So I understand what Shaq is saying, but Charles' initial point is right with the Kenny issue. That okay now 3 times. But what if you can go back and look at each individual one? Like, give me the one individual time with Dellavedova where you go, that is, without question, a dirty play, putting other players at jeopardy. Where his intent, that his intent was to do something like hurt an opponent. Do you have one of those?
I don't. I mean,
I don't either.
He locks up Gibson. After he got shoved down.
But 2 other things.
I understand that. I'm just saying that I'm looking for the fodder that people have. And the Korver, you're losing me if you're bringing up Korver as an example. He's diving for a ball on the ground, but you're right. It's the accumulation of, hey, he did this, hey, he did that. Oh, hey, he's this little undersized white point guard from the West Coast Conference that it's like he didn't win a scratch off lottery to get here. He got here for a reason.
And there was an Aaron Brooks play in the Chicago series that I could not. I rewound it a ton to see if I missed something, because that's usually what happens when there's retaliation out of nowhere.
Well, that's
what did I miss?
Well, that was the Bogut Howard thing we talked about earlier. Howard threw an elbow, but Bogut full on shoved him before he did it.
Right, Bogut, I would say is I'm more comfortable saying Bogut's a dirty player than I am Dellavedova.
Right.
What's up with you Kiwis and Aussies?
And that becomes a fun conversation.
Andrew Days.
Yeah, where are you at? Stop pushing dudes in rec games. But
speaking of like the Horford thing, like he clearly missed. He went for it.
Yeah, but he's loading up to smash him, right?
Yeah. And I was also just thinking of, like, we were talking about, different instances. The J.R. Smith against the Celtics. He got 2 games because he all out connected on his elbow.
Right, but he had also killed Jason Terry a year ago in the play, or 2 years ago in the playoffs. So, right. So there's a reputation thing in this. So now Dellavedova, like, he's become a marked guy.
Yep.
No matter what. I'm not comfortable looking at any one of those 3 individual things that we've referenced and me saying, okay, I know he went to lock up Gibson's leg on a stupid play around the rim, but I also know that there were two other things that happened before it. So the Horford, you're right, though, Steve. Imagine if Horford connected on that. Like, that could have been more than just losing out on Game 3 here.
He watches UFC for sure.
No doubt.
I remember one time, Shaq, I was talking about earlier, he loaded up and tried to hit Brad Miller in the back of the head, and he swung and missed, and thank God he did. Because if he hit him, who knows what he'd have done. But, I mean, and even without Korver, and even without Horford after he did what he did, Atlanta had a chance to steal a game, and they didn't. And that's why this series can be closed out tonight in a game you can hear on ESPN Radio.
Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. This season, the Mets have been a tale of two teams. One of the league's best at home and one of the worst on the road.
Towards the corner.
This weekend, they'll be at home at Citi Field facing the Marlins. Will their home field domination continue, or will Giancarlo Stanton lead Miami to a road win? The Mets and Marlins. The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by the first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. SVP and Russillo.
Was fired up yesterday when we got the email about who the guests include today. Dallas Keuchel, one of the best pitchers in the game, one of the great stories of the year is Houston. And Dallas, first of all, thanks for taking the time. I got a bunch of hopefully fun stuff for you. It will be for us. But before we get to that, man, you guys have been on the road for a bit, and we're all thinking about Houston because of what's going on down there. Is everything cool with you and yours and your teammates back at home?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things we're talking about is everybody's family safe, and thankfully everybody's doing okay.
It's just been brutal to see, and obviously the Houston area was, and so many areas in Texas were hit with rough weather. So you guys got a couple more in Baltimore before you get back home, and hopefully the things get improved in between now and then. Yesterday, you took your first loss of the year, and you pitched great. It's maybe a couple of balls up that the Orioles took out. Is it more frustrating to lose a game where you get roughed up, or a game where you got great stuff and maybe just one mistake ends up costing you?
Man, I think both of those are pretty accurate. Anytime the team takes a lead, and as my job as a starting pitcher is to hold the lead, it's very frustrating. And I think that when we scored 2 runs there to finally take the lead 3-2, and I ended up giving up a game-winning home run. That's the most frustrating part, is that those guys out there are battling their butts off, and they get 3 runs across the board and expect me to kind of shut it down, and I don't do my job correctly, and it costs us the game. So that's the most frustrating part for sure.
Dallas, you've been with this team now, your 4th season in, so you're part of the 111-loss season 2 years ago. Last year, 70-92. But you look at the start into April into May, you went 14-15. How important was that stretch to kind of change the way you felt about yourselves as you showed up at the park each day?
Well, we always continue to grind, and that's something that we take great pride in. We play a kid's game for a living, and nobody ever takes that for granted. And we want to get back to where the 04-05 Houston Astros were, and that's getting to the playoffs, and that's making World Series runs. So the city of Houston is a great sports town, and we are slowly and steadily trying to climb back up to get there where we were before.
Do you think it took Astros fans longer to accept you because of your 5 ERA the first 2 years, or your first name?
That's a great question. I think they're more accepting now just because I'm doing better. But I was pretty embarrassed of my performances pretty much that first half year and then my first full year in. But I always continue to make adjustments, and I love this game, and I will continue to make adjustments until I can't play any longer. A lot of the fans do come up at me and say, you ever think about changing your name to Houston? And I'm always like, you might have to talk to my mom about that one first.
Yeah, right. Parents have a lot more to do with this, I think, than people realize.
Yeah.
You were supposed to be good, and Scott said you've been awesome this year. That's a carryover from where you were last year. You're 27, I think 23 when you come up. How frustrating is that when you're going, I know I'm what I'm supposed to do. I know I have the talent, but I'm just not getting the job done.
It's very frustrating, and to see other guys come up that you've played against in the minor leagues who have had success, you kind of compare yourselves to other guys. And at first, I had some good success my first 4 starts, and I kind of just got too fine and started walking people and got hit around a little bit. And you compare yourselves to everybody that's doing well, and it's like, why can't I do this? But you got to continue to make adjustments
and then that factors into making better adjustments for yourself. And I think I just got more comfortable with the talent around me and the guys who I was facing every day. And once you get a good scouting report and know what guys want to do against you, that makes me feel that much more comfortable because I can adjust back to them as well.
Dallas Keuchel, I guess, Houston Astros pitcher, 6-1 on the season. Houston in first place in the West. What's the worst your name has been mangled? Your last name that you heard and you thought, wait, what?
I've honestly heard probably about 100 different pronunciations. I think earlier this year, somebody called me Keuchel with an R, and I'd never heard that before. Usually it's a common Keuchel or Keuchel. And nothing really bothers me just because I heard it all growing up in traveling tournaments and different sports venues. So really nothing bothers me anymore with my last name.
Well,
I'm used to all of it.
Yeah, you keep dealing, and people will figure it out. All right, what are you more proud of? Your fielding, Gold Glove winner last year, or your beard?
Well, I'm a huge Mark Burley fan, and he's had I think 4 Gold Gloves. So to be mentioned with him last year and actually win it was great. But I'm gonna have to say my beard just because I take great pride in grooming and manscaping this thing, and I don't know. I just love it. It's just a part of me now.
It's horrifying to look at, and this is from a guy that couldn't grow. I'm jealous because I could never do it. I don't know if, and I should, but I don't. I don't know if you and Harden have any face-to-face, any time together where you could kind of compare notes.
We actually haven't, and I was actually hoping to get something going with that because that would be awesome.
Are you afraid of any of the stuff, though, like the hipster beard studies are starting to tell us that maybe that thing's a little dirtier than we realized? Have you seen these studies?
You know what? The training staff with us I think they have a lot of issues with that, and they've brought that up a few times. But I think anybody on the team would tell you that I'm the most clean person. I shampoo and condition this thing multiple times a day. So I don't think you could ever see anything dirty about this beer.
All right, good. As long as you be on the P's and Q's. My final question for you is this. You got 2 more days in Baltimore. If you are a seafood fan, have you had a proper crab cake yet?
Yes, I actually had a pretty good crab cake last night. It was at Bar Cocina. It was over by the harbor, and it was pretty delicious. All right, there's some Bricky's is a good one that you ought to think about. There's just, if you've had some and you like seafood, that's good. You've never had a proper crab cake as a native of Maryland until you've had a Baltimore crab cake. So if you've had one and you enjoyed it, then that's good. I'll leave it at that. You're good. We appreciate the time, Dallas. Continued success. Thanks for stopping by. Keep the beard clean and keep the ERA tidy, all right? I'll try to. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we appreciate it. That's Dallas Keuchel. Last week I went to this meeting for SportsCenter, and I'm so glad and proud that you and I got through that without screwing it up because I want to say anything other than Keuchel.
I never said it. So I never reset. I was going to lay out on the reset. You're getting weird about the crab cakes here towards the end of the show. What's going on with you? I think everyone, and so I'm not getting in your case too bad about it, I don't think, but I think everybody kind of has their geographical, attachment to whatever cuisine that they're almost irrationally defensive about. But you're out of nowhere with this crab cake thing. Like, this is 5 times in the last few weeks. What's going on? Did you have a bad one? Did you get in an argument with somebody about it?
No, I just want people to understand that you'll see, like on a restaurant, it'll say Maryland crab cake. And then from Maryland. Right. Then they'll serve you some garbage, hockey puck-shaped nonsensical food stuff, which is not a proper crab cake. And this is a guy that, down in Houston, they're not going to get good crab cakes there. So you got to get a good Maryland crab cake. And I just want to make sure that people understand that they should get a proper crab cake.
Yeah, but that's what they're just, like, that's the thing on the menu. New York strip, Is it? Stanford Steve gets weird about pizza. Like, you will not eat pizza outside of the tri-state area, will you?
Yeah. No, I won't.
I don't know that you're wrong for that.
I feel I'm very spoiled here in my home state. With
See here, but here would be the difference. That if somebody came up here, you wouldn't make sure they had New York pizza because they got pizza everywhere. Crab cakes are specific to that region that are different. Like
New Haven pizza's global, dude.
What's that place called that they moved up here? I haven't gotten one yet.
Papa John's.
Better ingredients. I'm going to stop because, I don't know. I always forget who the sponsors are. Got to get me on that Papa John's.
They have an app.
Okay. What?
I just noticed when you said Baltimore. Is there a T in there or no?
No.
D. Baltimore.
Baltimore?
For me, yeah.
Okay.
Baltimore. Baltimore. I don't know, man. I am weird about the crab cakes.
But it's out of nowhere.
I think it's the season, too. Like, it's come up a bunch.
I've eaten them recently. I've had them.
That must be what it is, because I've never heard you, I don't want to say incensed about the topic, but you're really wrapping your arms around this thing. And I don't ever remember this many references to, like, getting mad about other crab cakes and how they may be put together.
Noted.
Like last week, if you have these red and yellow diced up peppers in it and it's flat, tartar sauce.
You can put that on there if you want to ruin it. That's no big deal. It's up to you.
Earlier today on SVP and Russillo.
Every Tuesday, Kurkjian stops by. Every Tuesday, we attempt to make Kurkjian laugh. We don't attempt. We make Kurkjian laugh because he's like a piñata. I mean, you can wail on him, and you know that he's going to laugh because he can't stop himself from laughing. But it's taken on a whole new dimension of him asking questions, and today a new knockout punch from Russillo. Tim, I have a pop quiz for you. He was drafted in the first round in 1988. He hit the first home run ever at Coors Field. He played for 5 different major league teams, the last of which was Atlanta. Who is he?
I should know this. I don't know. Who is it? I love it when you say this. Who is it?
Rico Brogna. Rico Brogna.
So when he was in Atlanta, who was the pitching coach there?
Leo Mazzoni. I love that this is tuned in to you making me punish you. Why are you doing this? You're done after I ask you the question. It doesn't have to get worse, but old Leo Mazzoni was the pitching coach down there. See you, Tim. You're the best.
Hey, Tim, you remember that closer, though, for the Braves, though, that kind of fell apart?
Marco.
Bye, Tim. That's genius out of you. Because you know he's vulnerable. You just give him like the little tap on the chest, and that's it.
I really like to lay out during that, like that's not, my best role is to just shut up and not talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
theoretically.
In that spot, I felt like we could just go one more Al Horford elbow up top.
And it worked out well.
SVP and Russillo.
What percentage of the spelling bee questions that get asked do you think you can answer? How many words do you think you could spell out of the ones that get asked? Like
that I've seen up during the show, maybe 2 all day. It'd be less than 10%. Yeah. I've gotten worse at it. I mean, now I'm just to the point where I'm typing away, and I'll type it wrong just to get it over with, so the right one comes up.
Thank you, and that's been my point over the years, is that the spelling as a skill is not required, because all you have to do is type it and then get the red squiggly line and then find out how do you actually spell it. So I've gotten worse as well, but it doesn't trouble me because I don't need to know how to spell, because the technology makes me a good speller.
Would it be weird if I dated your babysitter?
Well, she's a teenager, so yes.
That would be weird, yes. I didn't know who it was ahead of time. I'm just saying, theoretically, like, if she was of age.
Yeah, but she's not, so right now.
Well, let's pretend that she is, so it's not any creepier than it already is.
Okay,
That's a theory, not one specifically, the theory of.
Oh, right, just in theory.
Right.
No, I think it'd be potentially great. We'd have things to talk about. You'd know stuff. You'd hear things about my kid. They'd be like, "Hey, that little sassy little
He's really
youngster.
coming around,
huh?" Heard about her on that swing set, right? I mean,
heard she flushed the other day, you know? But then it could get weird if you and your wife goes, hey, we had plans on Friday. Russillo rolls in last minute, and he's taking Sue to the fair. Like, how did that happen?
I'll tell you how it happened, because on Wednesday he didn't know what he was doing. And on Thursday he thought maybe the fair was an option.
The fair could be in play.
And then on Friday afternoon he decided, hey, let's go to the fair. So, darling, we're just going to have to roll with this. Or we're going to have to find a new babysitter is what we're going to have to do, because she is going to be squired by a man whose whims about where he's going are on the breeze.
Yeah, you never know. If a team gets eliminated early, Sue, we have free time now. So, but Sue's a go-getter, you know, and she's not gonna live her life around you and your kid.
Understood. But I mean, just to bring it full circle, right now it'd be I believe against laws. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. All right.
So
not interested.
So we're set. Okay. Does Atlanta get it to a fifth game? It's a fourth game tonight.
I hate trying to figure out who's motivated when it's the throwaway game, but I would imagine Cleveland's going to take a mental break from this next game. But I thought Golden State was going to show up last night, so I could be completely wrong. I mean, I don't know how you predict those spots.
I don't either. Stanford Steve was mentioning this earlier. When Houston went home after competing in 2 games in Oakland, I thought you'd really see the best of them in Game 3. I really thought you'd see that. And for them to just get shattered the way they did was stunning. And then obviously a 45-point quarter last night was just stunning. That's as good as you've seen.
I thought because the games were close in or at Golden State, even though one's a little misleadingly close, that was better than like a blowout in Game 2 for Golden State to come into Game 3. They blow out Houston Game 2, then maybe they're not as locked in as they are at the start of Game 3.
Interesting theory. And with that in mind in Game 3, maybe you're Cleveland, you're just figuring we're banged up, man. The sooner we get this thing done with, the quicker we can begin getting rested up for the finals. We'll find out the answer tonight together. I got SportsCenter, so I will see you, I think 11 Eastern for that. No one will be watching. Flip over after the game's over. We'll be there. And remember, Olbermann, Wednesday and Friday, you'll see Russillo down there, dapper, duded up, doing his thing.
Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8. Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.